Seating. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the September meeting of the Germantown Planning Commission. We are a few minutes late. The executive session ran a little longer than anticipated. I appreciate your patience in waiting outside. And again, we're crowded in here due to the construction going on across in the main building. So please indulge us as we kind of have everybody crammed in here, and we're going to ask for your patience as we walk through this because this will be a fairly long meeting tonight. We need to call the roll first.
Mr. Bacon?
Here.
Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Mr. Alpine?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Mr. Hernandez?
Here.
Alderman Owen?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Chairman Harlan?
Here.
Mayor Palazzo?
Here. And we have a quorum. There are agendas. Hopefully people have found the agendas. Sheila, do you have them? If anyone needs a copy. And there's some up front. We have some modifications to the agenda. Item number D, 5D, which is watermark, will be moved to the last item on the agenda. So it will be the last item heard. And items 5A and 5B are being moved to the consent agenda. We need the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, do we have a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Barclay?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Abstain.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harlan?
Yes.
Mayor Palazzo?
Yes.
And the minutes are approved. Now I'm going to ask for approval of the consent agenda. At the executive session this evening, the following items were placed on the consent agenda by the planning commissions. Items 5A, which is the United Methodist Church, east side of Germantown Road, directly across from Germantown Road. And item 5B, which is City of Germantown, 3022 Hacks Cross Road, subdividing of that property. As part of the consent agenda, these items will not be presented, discussed, or voted upon individually. If you'd like to have either of these items discussed before the Planning Commission, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, again, items 5A and 5B have been placed on the consent agenda, will be voted on as one motion, and will not be discussed individually unless someone comes before the commission or in the audience comes forward to remove that item from the consent agenda. Does anyone interested in any of these matters wish to be heard? Seeing no one come forward, I'd like to note that on all matters concerning the consent agenda, the vote of each member of the Planning Commission will constitute an acknowledgement that the member has read the application or proposal, the staff reports, and the subcommittee report. I'm prepared for a motion on approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
For approval of the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. On all matters concerning the consent agenda, the vote of each member will constitute an acknowledgement that the member has read the application or proposal, the staff report, and the subcommittee report, and is fully aware of the issues. Please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be recusing or abstaining from item 5A, which is the Germantown United Methodist Church property.
Alderman Owens, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Mr. Barclay?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Powers?
Yes.
And the items on the consent agenda are approved. The next item on the agenda, is the Jacobs property at 7464 North Street in Germantown. Do we have a presentation by staff?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, what is, if you were here for either of those items, for the Methodist Church and or the subdivision on Hacks Cross Road, you're welcome to stay if you want to, but you certainly don't have to. Just make you aware that those items have been approved.
And if the staff will make their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5C is the Jacobs property at 7464 North Street. Their request in front of you tonight is the approval of a preliminary and final site plan for an outbuilding that is classified as an accessory dwelling live-work unit. This property, the existing house, and the existing detached garage on the subject property was constructed in 1998. In March of 2002, it was rezoned from residential R to office campus OC. It was subsequently rezoned from OC to the T5 Urban Center District in 2007 with the approval of the SMART Code. In May of 2016, the new owners, the Jacobs, were granted a variance for a 5-foot-high fence located 9 to 12 feet from the front property lines of North Street, McVeigh Road, located in the front yard of this property. The applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs, intend to continue using this property as residential, and the addition of the live-work accessory dwelling unit is an allowed use under the current T5 zoning. With the single-family residence and detached garage predating the T5 Urban Center zoning, the applicant is proposing to construct a new live-work unit to utilize the T5 zoning per 23-763. Again, both the live-work and accessory dwelling units are permitted by right in the T5 zoning district. The proposed building would be a maximum of 2 stories, which complies with the requirements in 23-770. They do have 2 warrants for the building. Warrant number 1 is to locate the building 166 feet away from the rear property line. 40 feet from the rear property line is the allowed rear front yard setback for any accessory dwelling or any accessory structure on the site to be used as a accessory dwelling unit or a live-work unit. The existence of a pond requires the additional 124 feet or 126 feet that they're requesting as part of warrant number 1. Warrant number 2 on this project consists of the number of parking spaces that would be utilized as part of the proposed live-work unit. They are requesting 4 parking spaces, and under the code, 1 parking space per living unit is what is allowed. So they're requesting a warrant for the additional parking spaces that would be utilized by the applicants as part of their primary residential use, as well as any accessory dwelling unit use or live-work uses associated with this. At the subcommittee, Mrs. Jacobs stated that her business is such that clients would not be visiting the home, that this would be for Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs to conduct their business from the house occasionally, but most of their business was conducted either off-site or via telephone or the internet. That ends staff's presentation tonight, and the decision in front of you is for the 2 warrants. The location of the building 166 feet away from the property line, and the addition of the 3 parking spaces. Again, this use is allowed under 23-763 by right as both live, work, or accessory dwelling unit.
Commissioners, do you have a question of staff?
Just a question of clarification. The 4 parking spaces are actually 4 enclosed parking spaces on the ground floor of the building.
Yes, sir.
Other questions?
Karen, I got a question. I know we're talking about the rear yard setbacks, but I'm looking on the site plan. Do we have any idea what the side yard setback says? On one site plan it says 15, and in one it says 13.6. I'm just trying to, what's the setback on that sideline? Do you know any idea?
On the sideline, it's a maximum of 15. So they can, it's a,
There's no minimum.
there's a minimum of 0, I think, in the T5.
Okay.
So there's no minimum, sorry. It's 0 to, I apologize.
That's fine. Yeah. I understand. All right. It's conflicting. It's 13.6 on one site plan and 15 on another, so I didn't. But if it's 0.
Mhm.
Other questions, commissioners? If not, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Step up to the podium.
Yes, sir, if you will, and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Barry Jones, S. Barry Jones Architects, 1861 Madison Avenue, Memphis. Don't really have anything to add to Cameron's presentation, except that the whole idea was to get the building to fit into the landscape. It's a terrain, very hilly terrain there, and the building is partially set into the to a hill there. So the profile of the building, this may be a little misleading. It's not going to be too ostentatious or anything like that. It's a wooded lot. It's very insulated from surrounding properties. So I think it's going to be a real nice addition to the area there, and really help that back part kind of get a little more developed, if you will. It's more a little more cleaned up. There's a lot going on around it, I understand.
So you and your client is aware of all the potential that's going on around there?
Yes, I believe they are.
Yes, so we bought the property, we're excited about the opportunity that's going on behind us.
Any questions?
Questions?
Okay, thank y'all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Further discussion from the commissioners? Commissioner Bacon, do you have a report?
Mr. Chairman, the main motion is to approve the revised preliminary and final site plan for an outbuilding, an accessory dwelling unit live-work building at 7464 North Street, subject to Commission's discussion. Staff comments as contained in the staff report, and documents and plans submitted with the application. The proposed warrant motion number 1 is to approve a warrant from section 23-770.4.e to allow the front yard setback of the building to be more than 40 feet from the rear property line.
That's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second.
Well, you need to
Oh, I'm
start.
sorry.
To just start and vote on the main motion.
We need to vote on
and
it,
the
yeah.
warrant separately.
So why don't we reread the
Sorry,
main
my
motion?
fault. The main motion to approve the revised preliminary and final site plan for an outbuilding, an accessory dwelling unit live-work building at 7464 North Street, subject to the Commission's discussion, staff comments as contained in the staff report, and documents and plans submitted with the application.
Do we have a motion, a second to the motion?
One staff comment, could we just remove revised, because since this is the first time that they're coming with a preliminary and final site plan, I've taken out the revised elsewhere, but that one got missed, so that revised should be taken out. So to approve the preliminary and final site plan is how it should be, just without revised.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Mr. Barclay?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Powell?
Yes.
And now we go to the warrants.
The proposed warrant motion number 1, Mr. Chairman, is to approve a warrant from the section 23-770.4.e to allow the front yard setback of the building to be more than 40 feet from the rear property line.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Mr. Barclay?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes. Dictate that in this case.
Mr. Clark?
I'm gonna vote yes as well. The pond in front of the topography just is gonna allow them to, or encourage them to have a larger setback, so I'm voting yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Also voting yes, given the characteristics of the property, that setback is warranted.
Alderman Owens?
I'm also voting yes for the reasons stated previously. The pond make it physically impossible to set that home, work, residence that close, so yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Voting yes for the same reasons as previously stated, due to topography and the location of the pond, it does warrant a setback change.
Chairman Harris?
And I also vote yes for the reasons stated previously.
Mayor Powell?
Yes.
Next motion.
Mr. Chairman, the proposed motion number 2 to approve a warrant from section 23-792.a.3 to allow 4 parking spaces for the outbuilding rather than the maximum 1 per dwelling unit.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Mr. Barclay?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes. I think it's consistent with what we're trying to do with smart growth to add the parking without anybody destroying the smart growth.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes, I believe the parking is justified and needed, and so I vote yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Voting yes, due to the fact that it is a detached dwelling, live-work area, I think the parking would be consistent with that use, so I vote yes.
Chairman Harden.
I vote yes due to the unique parking requirements for this outbuilding.
Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
And the warrants are approved, and the outline plan is approved, and Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs, we look forward to seeing a great new facility back there, and we're excited about it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Gardenia Court Plan Unit Development. Do we have a staff presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request tonight is, first in front of you is 5E, which is the outline plan revocation approval on the north side of Winchester and east of Crestwind Hills Drive. As background, the 10.53 acre parcel was approved and recorded by Memphis and Shelby County in 1991, annexed by the city of Germantown in 2000, and rezoned to C1 neighborhood commercial as part of alignment with the existing plan unit development on this property. 2016, the city of Germantown, as you know, rezone this area T4 as part of the recommendations from the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan. This area has remained undeveloped since its annexation into the city of Germantown. This application for the outline plan revocation is being filed pursuant to 23-576 as part of the Germantown Code of Ordinances. And as part of that, the Planning Commission shall meet and forward a recommendation to the BMA concerning the repeal of the approval of the outline or final plan development. This was approved to allow the development of commercial uses in accordance with the outline plan conditions reflected on the 1991 recorded document initially as part of the Gardenia Court Plan Unit Development. The property has no final plans recorded on it, and the revocation of this existing recorded outline plan will null and void its regulations of how the property develops and allow the owners to move forward with new plans that would conform to the T4 zoning that reflects the city of Germantown's request and recommendations for zoning that was approved by this board and by the BMA in 2016.
Commissioners, any questions of staff? Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Fine, the staff's.
Thank you, Mr. Binkley. Again, commissioners, any questions? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak against this project? Is there any further discussion by the commissioners? Do we have a subcommittee report?
Mr. Chairman, the Smart Code Review Committee met on August 16th, 2017, and recommended that this item be heard at the September 5th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting, subject to the committee's discussion, comments of staff as contained in the staff report, and documents and plans submitted with the application. Letters of recommendation from the DRC and ECD representatives are included in this report. The proposed motion is to approve the revocation of the outline plan for Gardenia Court PUD side of Winchester Road and the east side of Crestwind Hill Drive, subject to the commission's discussion. Staff comments and conditions is contained in the staff report, and documents and plans submitted with the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Bagley?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Chairman Harden?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
And it is approved. Okay. Now we go to item number 5F. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, sir. Picking up where we left off, this property, which includes the 10.53 acres that the commission just heard, additionally adds 13.93 acre parcel to it to bring it up to just under 25 acres. The proposal in front of you tonight is the request of an outline plan approval. All of this property was rezoned. The entire 24.93 acres was rezoned to T4 as part of the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan recommendations. This application has been filed as a plan unit development in order to incorporate a private internal drive system into the plan in accordance with the subdivision requirements, section 1756 of the Germantown Municipal Ordinance. The approval of the outline plan is not an approval of the concept plan. The outline plan only approves the proposed future use of the property, the proposed street system, and the proposed density of the site. All other details moving forward, such as building placement, height, scale, setback, architectural details, etc., are going to be addressed as part of future preliminary and final site plan, and all of those will be subject to review by the Planning Commission, the Smart Code Review Commission that includes individuals from the Design Review Commission as well as the Economic Development Commission at the time that those details are ready by the applicant. The current outline plan request includes areas within the T4 that allows for a mixture of uses that includes limited residential, limited commercial, limited retail, and limited office. Also allows a minimum of 2-story buildings and a maximum of 4-story buildings. And when you look at this relative to the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan, the concept master plan and land use plan from the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan recommended that this section of the study area be developed with service retail uses along the Winchester Road frontage and residential uses on the remaining area to the north. The concept master plan also recommends, when considering higher density residential, that is residential beyond single family detached or single family attached, being limited to 8 or more dwelling units per acre. Based on the extended market analysis and recommended build-out schedule in the small area plan, it's staff's recommendation that an optimum density ratio for this site in T4 be no more than 12 dwelling units per acre. The request from the applicant was for a maximum of 15 units to the acre. That would result in a total of 375 units allowed if they move forward and decide to develop all 375 units. However, looking at it and considering T4 and the rest of the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan, staff is more comfortable with 300 units, which is 12 times 25. We also want to make sure that while warrants were discussed at the Smart Code Review Committee, no warrants are being brought forward at this time. Warrants will be discussed as part of any preliminary and final site plan approval and request that will be heard by the Smart Code Review Committee and the Planning Commission at that time. We want to also bring forward as part of this meeting that considerations for sanitary and other upgrades are being reviewed a little bit differently than it was laid out in staff comments, that the analysis was, we'll call it off by a little bit within the sanitary sewer model. So the upgrades to this area for the 15-inch sewer line aren't necessarily required for this development, so their level of impact fees going forward will be reduced appropriately. We also want to add, as part of our general comments, fire department comments relative to the concept plan. I'll allow the fire marshal to present those comments so that those are clear in tonight's record.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Would the applicant,
Mr. Chairman, you might want to hear from the fire marshal.
hold on.
Are your comments, Jody, I'm sorry, Mr. Fire Marshal Jody, are they the same as were in the subcommittee?
Yes.
Or, okay, got those, all right.
So can we hear those comments from?
It's a long list.
It's about 15 items, maybe 12.
The items that the fire marshal are recommending are a part of your package. So they're in the package, if you'd like to review them.
They were in
They were
the subcommittee.
They were
Subcommittee.
not-
So would you like to hear them?
Well, I don't need to hear them as long as they're as a part of this report.
I agree.
We can add them in.
I agree with Mr. Parks, as long as there's understanding at that subcommittee.
So the subcommittee fire, excuse me for interrupting.
That's fine.
The subcommittee fire marshal comments are now a part of the record that we are reviewing and if approval tonight.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's
Okay,
correct, and
good.
they will be included as the package moves forward to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for consideration.
Very good. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Before we,
Yep.
Mike, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Cameron, in regard to I know the staff had an issue with the 15 units per acre. Is there, for the Forest Hill Heights area, I can't recall, I know I've seen it studied some point, but I don't recall the number. Was there a recommended number of apartment units to be built in that area?
There was a general market assessment that was done that looked at anywhere between 250 and 1,250 to be built out over the period of time, a period of time, 10 years to 25 years. The market analysis was a snapshot of what existed, and when you take into consideration that the market can change, we still want to make sure that we're proceeding with an appropriate level of density as far as any multifamily development is put forward, and that we do eventually want to make sure that as part of developments in this area, that the Planning Commission consider that there is a multitude of other uses that are allowed under T4 and T5 and even T3 that were all approved as part of the small area plan. And while the layout and concept was put forward in the small area plan, there is a little bit of flexibility in the number of units. With another item on tonight's agenda, they ended up with just under 16 units to the acre. The plan itself recommended 8 or more dwelling units to the acre. However, in the area where that one is, it was considered for multifamily and residential development. Part of this site was recommended to be neighborhood service retail with residential uses to the north of it. So we wanted to make sure that the applicant was aware of that, and that we put forward a level of density that we were comfortable with as staff moving forward within the T4 area based on what we're receiving with interest in the T5 area that still allows a significant amount of density on that site. As I mentioned, the plan itself recommended 8 or more dwelling units to the acre for higher density residential. 12 units to the acre still allows 300 units on this site and allows them to consider future development that may be able to occur east of us in Collierville that could be incorporated into a larger development that blurs those lines. That's part of the discussion that we had, blurs those municipal lines. It's part of the discussion that we had both as part of the Forest Hill Heights plan as well as with the applicant at their sketch plan review, and we just want to make sure that those are out there so that we can start to see a little bit more than multifamily developments moving forward and not to oversaturate the market with just multifamily.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Other comments or questions from the commissioners?
No, I just remember in the site plan, it was residential to the north of the Winchester. I mean, other than the commercial and retail and the multi-use on the front, was multifamily's fine, but graduating back was kind of my understanding of at least this particular site plan. That's not what I'm seeing and what's being proposed, so that's my concern.
Well, and again, remember, Mr. Bennett, tonight it's the outline plan, but the concept plan is part of the outline plan package.
As my understanding is, we're approving density, so we're approving.
You are correct.
And I've got a real problem with the density level. I think it's way too much. So somebody's got a tough hill to climb with me tonight.
Tangent to that, in the small area narrative, or in the plan or in the narrative, were there any specific references to multifamily building height and stories? So this contemplates, at this density level, this contemplates 4-story buildings. Was there any reference at all in
The only reference to building height,
positive or negative to a 4-story apartment building?
not necessarily. You know, it's working with a minimum of 2 stories, you know, with the design standards that we included as part of your packet. With massing, buildings should typically be 2 to 4 stories, with 1-story development permitted only where it's economically not feasible to build multi-story buildings.
So it says 2 to 4.
2 to 4. Currently, under the smart code, though, just for the record, it is not permitted to build a 1-story development. So 2 to 4 is where the recommended design standards on page 47 of the Forest Hill Heights plan.
Other questions? If not, would the applicant like to make a presentation? If you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Les Binkley with Boyle Investment Company, 5900 Poplar. We concur with staff's assessment. I would like to have 15 units to the acre as opposed to 12. I think it's consistent with development in the area, with Miller Creek, with the Watermark application and other sites on the Baptist application. So speaking about building heights, at 12 units to acre, it'd be hard to get 3 stories of building, or you just build a lot fewer buildings in order to get 4 stories. So we would like 15 units to the acre, and we'd like for you to consider granting us that. I think it builds consistent with the neighborhood, and that's really all I have, since we're just approving a framework tonight for future consideration.
Questions of the applicant?
Is there any consideration for retail? Any consideration for outparcel retail?
I mean, I think that the way the land use plan works, it's very flexible and doesn't require it. But philosophically, especially with all the pressures on retail in the market, with Amazon taking over the world, and I feel like just not continuing strip retail development is very important, and to cluster retail in strategic nodes, I think philosophically would be a good direction to take, whether it's in the southern part of the small area plan along Winchester and part of that town center, so to speak, on the south side. This would, I think, just kind of facilitate just more strip retail, which we just want. I don't think we want that continuation coming further east down Winchester, and so that's why I didn't bring it forward. And I know philosophically why it's embedded in the code, but I think when you just kind of isolate the circumstance here, might not be the best avenue.
Well, that's so small, it would just be an oddball little thing sitting there.
Correct.
Other questions of the applicant?
Yes, I mean, I take a completely different view with my commissioner on that, because the whole concept of this area being developed is there's neighborhoods, and you're going to have residential, you still want walkability,
Mhm.
you wanna, you're gonna need a dry cleaners, you're gonna need a coffee shop, or some small little, restaurant, maybe. We're not, none of those things that I'm aware of, Amazon has taken over yet. Maybe
Mhm.
they will in the future. It's been very hard to do your dry cleaning via the internet, but maybe you can. Shop before. But there are gonna be certain things that would service this area that I think would be appropriate in that section, considering what's going in there. There's already a subdivision's been approved for going back in there. You're talking about putting a whole lot of density in what you're proposing. So there's gonna be a need for some service industries on that side of the street, in my opinion. So I think it's something you really need to look at, because the whole point is it's mixed use. At least, we went through a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of people contributed to come up with this plan, okay? And to say, well, those people were well-meaning, but they didn't know what the crap they were talking about, is just a little, disingenuous to me, okay? And this is what they all came up with, and I respect the people who got together and did this, and these are the things we would like to see, and it's been approved. And so, to just out of hand say, well, we're not really, you don't think it works because you want, 15 units to an acre, I don't think I've got a problem with that whole concept, okay? So it's not a strip center, it's not a huge tract of land you're dealing with. We're not talking about putting Costco in there, okay? We're talking about a few little retail businesses that are spaces that will, in my opinion, serve the neighborhood that you're talking about developing, plus those that are being developed along that whole corridor. And so we think that's a legitimate concern to be looked at when you're planning this, regardless of what else is done with the rest of the project.
I would just say,
Go ahead.
parcel by parcel, I don't think each parcel needs to be mixed use. I do think when you look at it in its entirety, it does need to be mixed use, and does need to be walkable and connectivity and connected. And so that's why, from an appropriate standpoint, I think the retail needs to be more clustered, and people can cross the street, or they can walk down to Galena to the east. I mean, there's ways to get services. It's just when you fragment it and you just have strip continuing after strip, I think the real thing is to have continuity and a sense of place, and you can create that where you have it more appropriately done on the south side of Winchester. And so it's not that 12 units to the acre or 15 units to the acre is going to prohibit me from putting a little 10,000 square foot strip retail building out there. It's not going to make a bit of difference. And so it's not like I'm going to be bring down my 15 units to 12 density, and then I can do the retail strip. It's not going to make any bit of difference from a land use plan and being able to fit it all on there. It's just, I think you need more retail in together to be successful. We think it's a minimum of 15 to 20,000 feet that you need from a market standpoint for them to work off each other and not just be an anomaly sitting out there at 7 to 10,000 feet. That's just my opinion, and the reason my plan is reflected that way.
Question, we talked about this being a smart growth, which we look at having a blend, not necessarily a strip center, but a blend within each building or several buildings, where perhaps retail and apartments could be staged out near Winchester that would have services for the people back in the apartment complex. And that would bring the mixed use that we are looking for. I don't think any of us are looking for a strip center to be built along the road there. We're looking for it to be integrated in. And I'm thinking of a project I think Bull has something to do with down in Colleyville, where they had some of the corner areas of the main street coming in of the buildings had some small retail items in it, which was, I think, some coffee shops or bakeries or something of that nature involved in it. And I think we're looking to have something, I don't think we're, like you said, looking for a Costco or anything here, but we are looking for, mom and pop operations that might be intertwined within the overall project, so that it is a mixed use. Correct. As is called for in our smart growth.
But what's different there is we have much more land that we can develop there, much like this entire district is what we have there. And so we have all that room to work with it. And if you picked out a little sliver within Schilling Farms, for example, it might not check off every box of what exactly a mixed-use neighborhood is, but in its entirety, it functions that way. And this is what you want to achieve here, regardless of if that my particular appendage parcel on the north side of Winchester is exactly that.
Commissioners, other questions of the applicant?
I'm happy to answer any of the questions. Come on, thank you.
Greatly, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Please come forward. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Edgar Babian. I live at 3580 Crespin Drive, Germantown, Tennessee. I'm the house directly across from the site thing, First Street, the second house on the right. First off, normally when these things are brought in, we have more drawings, we have more ideas of the heights and sizes and all this. The area immediate to the west of this is a low-density area. I mean, it's right now presently zoned for 15,000 square foot minimum size of lots. He can put all 4-story buildings in here now if you approve this, and we got houses just to the west of it that are going to be built, and they can look right in the backyards. So that's going to really affect the sellability of the houses next to these apartments. You know, it should be more low density, like you said. 12 is still a lot of apartments. His layout on the streets, they look pretty good, but if they're 2-story building is one thing, but if they're 4-story building, that's totally different. I got a big concern about water in the subdivision, because subdivision to the left that was put in originally, they were supposed to put the water line all the way to Poplar in phase 1. I think now y'all have agreed to go phase 4. That's 4 years from now. There's only so much water down there if we're using Germantown water. Now, if you're selling the Memphis water, you got all the water you need. But for Germantown water, we got concerns that there's not enough water going in there, and it's going to be at least 4 years before that happens. It is supposed to be mixed use. Like you said, there's a place down Collierville in one of the apartment complexes down there. They've got a little eatery in there, and people go in there, have breakfast, have lunch. It's mixed use. You've got different things in there. I mean, the front has been commercial. The guy held out on selling it because he wanted to have something in there. Y'all just changed it from that to this, and now he doesn't want to do with the mixed use. It's kind of strange on that part. But we'd like to see a little bit less density, a little bit more what's going in, make sure the infrastructure's there, the sewer's there, and all that. If they have to run the water line to Poplar, you know, let them run it. If they're going to build it before the other one, whoever starts, have them bring the infrastructure in. But less density would be better. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Babian. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak in opposition? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes, please.
Reminded me of that last time.
I'm consistent.
But the pro for it gets all the time in the world. The plan over here. Now, I'm Kevin Speed. I live at 9181 Forest Downs. I have for 20 years, and I represent Forest Downs Homeowner Association. We're just west of Crestwind. And just a little history, you know, we were told this wasn't going to develop like this. We conceded the, after annexation, and we conceded the Forest Hill Heights area, and they're between south of Winchester that, you know, that is how it was going to develop, and hope that that would eliminate apartments and density to the north. And, you know, was led to believe there wouldn't be apartments there. This was going to be an Oakley type subdivision, something 15,000 square feet, which we agreed upon and was approved by this panel. When that wasn't built, then, as they say, things change. And we get a change in the zoning, a change in the density. And that's what kind of concerns us, the density. It absolutely concerns the density. I mean, what's the reason for the density? It's not successful financially to build an Oakley type subdivision. I don't know. Is that the math? Is that how it works to make things fly? But absolutely not apartments. I mean, this is supposed to be smart growth. Our southern gateway into Germantown, I mean, is apartments the best we can do as a southern gateway to be smart? It just doesn't feel right. You know, the density of 12, 15, 20 people per acre. I mean, you know, we're used to 1 person per acre. and would like to see some of that maintained. The zoning changes are not consistent with the residential around it. And I don't know if we need to get, everybody can't come up here and oppose it, so I represent the ones that are asking me. But the people in the Vinings are opposed to it, the people in Crestwood are opposed to it, the people in Forest Downs are opposed to it. And if need be, I'll get them all up here if we need it, or if it helps our cause, to at least be heard, either through meetings like this or petition. I don't know if that helps, social media, whatever it takes, but we'd like to have a little more consideration of the density that goes into our area. And this may not be the final plan, but we'll be back.
Mr. Speed, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to the project? Commissioners, any further questions, comments?
I have a quick question. Who's that?
Go ahead.
No. Mr. Fabian brought up the water service out there on the development next to it. Have we done any kind of research on, Mr. Gwaltney, on servicing that area? If this much density were to go into that area, do we have enough? Has any research been done on the water pressure or water service out there to that?
Yes, the existing water system cannot handle the proposed developments today.
Okay.
The two water projects that are in the works to provide better pressure and volume. New water line down Forest Hill Irene Road that the city will be installing with the Forest Hill Irene Improvements project. For now scheduled for next fiscal year for construction. That will help provide better pressure and volume, as well as another water line from Poplar to Winchester to be installed with Goodwin Farms. Mr. Bateman was correct, that is to be done in phases. By phase 3 is when it will be completely connected. So, yes, and everything's in the timing. If Goodwin Farms goes away and that segment is not built, then in order to support another similar size apartment complex like this, that will have to be put in. Whether it's the Goodwin Farms developer or whichever developer is in line at that time.
So maybe the question is follow up on that. Are you saying that the Forest Hill Irene improvements that are being done as a capital project, would that alone meet the help or I guess satisfy the pressure requirements that are needed for this apartment complex?
The answer, for just this apartment complex, probably. That's about all I can say. Then we have the Watermark, this development, Goodwin Farms, another project at Crestwind and Winchester being proposed. So the Forest Hill line alone, for all of those properties that are proposed developments, the answer is no.
Well, what about, because we've approved Goodwin Farms?
That's correct.
Goodwin Farms plus this.
The BMA has not approved it yet.
Now,
Yes.
not just the planning commission, yeah, it's not going to the BMA, but the planning commission.
Goodwin Farms water line plus
this.
Forest Hill project. I'm sorry. Repeat the question again.
Goodwin Farms plus this application, plus at this density level.
With just the Forest Hill line?
With just the Forest Hill line. That would be near term, that would be a near-term condition.
And that would be iffy.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sorry if I addressed the water.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay, sure, come on up. I need your name and address, please.
Michael Rogers with Fisher Arnold, 9180 Crestwind Hills Drive. We fully understand, keeping in mind right now we're coming with an outline plan for the allowed use, but we fully understand and anticipate, depending on the timing of coming back with a site plan, that if the Goodwin Farms project hasn't made the connection all the way through Poplar, even if the Forest Hill hadn't done it, we understand there could be a possibility of having to put booster pumps in here to get adequate fire flow and water pressure for this development. So we're fully aware of that, and knowing that at the time that comes, we'll be evaluating where the existing Germantown water system is at that time and how this development would do it. It's not like we're getting approval right now to come out and start building, because obviously we'd need to be looking at that at this very moment.
We are approving a density.
We are approving the density, that's correct, but I think a water booster pump, if you're in a situation where you need a water booster pump, you can make it work whether it's 15 dwelling units per acre or 12 dwelling units per acre. You can get it to what the pressure needs. I don't think, yeah, it may mean that we're building a bigger booster pump than what we would have, but the point is that with that added, and that's what the Forest Hill plan talks about on their utility analysis, is that there's a possibility at this extreme east end, if you will, there could be needs for a booster pump, depending on the timing of development.
Another, just a quick comment, unrelated to the water, and is this 12 units, the staff is recommending up to 12 units for your application and the other application, the watermark. That doesn't mean that we have agreed that 12 units per acre is appropriate. We may decide it's really 8, which is what the Forest Hill Heights subdivision talked about, 8 or above. So don't be operating that 12 is clearly appropriate, okay? It may be, I don't know. But I just wanted to make that comment, because I've heard that come out of several folks' mouths, and well, if it's 15 or 12, we haven't decided on that, okay?
We understand that. We understand this is setting an allowable maximum density. Even if we're approved at 15, we don't know that we're coming back with 15. If we're approved at 12, we don't know we'd come back with 12. We're gonna have to come back with a site plan. We fully understand that. And also, a little thing, just to make clear, when we're talking about the right to go with 4 buildings, we don't anticipate all these buildings being 4-story. It'll be a mixture of 4-story and 2-story, so we don't want that impression to go out there too. It's a mixture to get, depending on how the site plan lays out and what you're doing. So,
Would have been nice to have seen where those were contemplated.
well, and again, I
Yeah,
believe
it'd
that's
be
a site plan.
It'd be a conceptual
Yeah.
level, but,
Yeah.
you know, whether that's stepping back or whether that's 2, you know, on the center road stepping back, or,
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
I just look at the plan and it.
Sure.
If
And
it's
I
all
guess we-
4-story, it's a little bit of a canyon driving through there. As close
And I
as
think so, and that's why I say I don't think you'll see that. You wouldn't see that as a plan. But I don't think we're to the point that far along. That's a site plan related issue when we get to those specifics.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'll just fully recognize those 2 sites put together make it difficult to develop, especially with the master concept. But I will remind the board, I mentioned this a couple meetings ago in subcommittee, that we all participated in the small area plan, and many of the residents here and property owners and stakeholders did. And so I would hope that we would try to adhere to the plan to our best of our abilities. And I keep remembering that somewhat of a figure of 500 units in total, whereas it's, again, a concept, and it wasn't necessarily written in stone and stipulated that we would only have 500 multifamily, but I hope we would stay somewhere in that vicinity. And this body's got a lot of experience and wisdom, and so I know this is a tough task, but you guys are up to it.
Thank you. Other comments, commissioners?
No, just thank you, Mayor. I remember there was some discussion about how many multifamily was going to be in this whole Forest Hill Heights, and I didn't recall it being as many as we're looking at
500 may
right
not be
now.
the magic number, neither may 601, but I know it's not more than 1,000. I mean, if I were personally casting the vote, which I will at one point in time.
Commissioner Bacon, do we have a subcommittee report?
Chairman Harless, the Smart Code Review Committee met on August 16th, 2017, and heard a presentation from the applicant. It was recommended that the application be amended to only request outline plan approval at this time. If revised as recommended, the application would be placed on September 5th, 2017 Planning Commission agenda for public hearing, subject to the committee's discussion, comments of staff, revisions presented by the applicant. Letters of recommendation from the DRC and ECD representatives are included in this report.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I need to make the main motion, sorry. The main motion tonight is to approve the outline plan for Viridian Plan Development located at the north side of Winchester Road, abutting the town of Collierville city limit, subject to the commission's discussion, staff comments, and conditions as contained in the staff report and documents and plans submitted with the application.
I would remind the commission that if you decide to reduce the number of dwelling units or increase, whichever you decide to do, item number A2 will have to be amended. It is written as recommended by staff.
What page is that on?
That's on page 4.
It's under staff comments.
Under staff comments, outline plan conditions.
Mr. Chairman, it's all ambiguous to me what we're talking about. That was going to be my comment too. What if we're talking about a maximum density? Are we talking about what the staff has recommended at 12 units per acre? Is that Mr. Bacon's motion?
That's his motion, is that he's following staff recommendations, staff comments, which is 12 per acre, maximum.
Right.
The
I just
applicant
wanna
has,
make sure-
and the applicant has requested 15.
I understand, but the motion that you have at the moment has a maximum of 12 units per acre, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, as shown in the staff report. And also, the motion includes the fire department's recommendations that were presented to the subcommittee that Alderman Owens submitted. So those two, in addition to all the other comments, I wanted to make clear or before the planning commission tonight. That's the motion, and if there's a second.
So does everybody understand the motion, that the fire department comments are in there and a maximum of 12 units per acre is the staff recommendation and part of this motion? Do we have questions?
Yes, I have a question. I guess maybe for the applicant, and I'm not suggesting that this is going to be approved or not approved tonight. Mr. Brinkley, you said something along the lines, I think I heard you say, that if the development was, if this outline plan was approved at 12 units per acre, that you probably wouldn't do 4 stories. Did I hear that correctly or no?
Right. Well, yes, you did hear that correctly. Whether it's 15 units at an acre or 12, you can do it without doing 4 stories. So it just depends on the number of buildings that you would include. So
And I'm just
the density really doesn't really push you to do 4 stories. The reason I was contemplating and had a warrant in my original application of being able to go up to 4 stories was to be able to develop a higher end product that you could justify economically to have an elevator. That's really the only thing driving a 4-story building is the implementation of an elevator.
And you just brought to my mind, of course, we're not voting on the number of stories, I guess, tonight, but I hear from the neighbors that 4 stories is a concern, and I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, if 4 stories is a concern, you're gonna have 2-story buildings and 3-story walk-ups. You're not gonna have a nicer 4-story building that has an elevator, a conditioned corridor, and things of that nature. So it's really a higher end product that you need the extra floor of units to justify the expense of the elevator. That's the reason for the warrant that's not in front of you, but.
Right, I understand, okay, all right. That's, my question has been answered, thank you.
Other questions? All the commissioners understand that the fire department comments are in there and 12 units per acre.
Yes, except that I was a little confused by Ms. Pounder's comments about we need to revise staff comment A2.
Only if you intend to increase the number of units.
Other than 12, if it's anything other than 12.
Okay. So we have the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would just remind you that the first comment on page 5 is deleted. Staff comment on page 5 concerning the sewer. To remind y'all that that's been taken out.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
I think at this point, we don't have enough information about this particular project or what they're trying to do density-wise. I'm a little uncomfortable, even with 12. units per acre, not knowing how they're gonna configure them on the site or what they're looking at doing. I don't have enough information to really be comfortable with moving forward. I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, but that's a real concern to me, even though, staff may think that may be a decent number. I'm not sure it may be, okay? And I'd like to have more information as I sit here, but I don't. So I'm just very uncomfortable with it, and I'm not gonna be supporting this particular outline plan tonight.
I think the applicant has heard this on several occasions and has decided to proceed the way he's proceeding, knowing that this is just an outline plan and not the final product, and that it could be severely modified when he comes before us.
Again, I have a problem giving somebody a blank check and then letting them decide how they're gonna, to who they're gonna write the check. You got X dollars. I do that with my kids, okay? Here's X dollars, spend it how you want. Don't call me, on the 25th of the month and say you got 5 days left in the month but don't have any money. It's not the way it works, okay? So that's kind of what I'm looking at we're doing here. And I'm just real uncomfortable with it. I think it should be less dense as we get close to those residential areas that we're developing back there. There's nothing that says they're gonna do that, and until I can get a comfort level, I'm just not gonna be in favor of it, so I'm sorry.
Okay. We have a.
I don't know if it's too late for that.
Mr. Bickley, do you want to respond?
I can. The reason we process an outline plan, Les Binkley, Boyle Investment Company, 5900 Poplar. The reason we're doing an outline plan is because the enormous amount of constraints that this property has. We have the Norfolk Southern to our north. We have high-powered transmission lines to our west. It's not even an easement. MLG&W actually owns the ground. Goodwin Farms can't cross it. We can't cross it. We have a municipal boundary to the east. And then we have one access point on Winchester Boulevard. Having all those constraints, I need a better framework to work in. And that was what I'm trying to accomplish coming before you, saying, can I show you basically my intent of putting a central spine road with buildings along the street? Can I have some confirmation on a framework of which to further develop plans to come back and talk to you? I don't have 2,000 feet of linear frontage. I have 500 feet, and it's really long and narrow. And so based on those constraints, I wanted to take one step forward and show you what my intentions were to get feedback and validation before going and spending a lot of dollars to bring forth a plan that I don't know will work. And so that's really the reason I'm just doing this outline plan step first, is to get some codification of what I can do to come back in front of you again.
I think hopefully you've heard some comments that'll give you some guidance on that going forward. So.
Sure. Yes, sir.
And I think he recognizes that what he comes back with may be rejected by this commission. So that's just the risk he's taking.
But to have some
yes.
further
Or
framework.
approving an outline plan if you vote in favor. That's the point.
And I think, I think what Mr. Bennett's trying to say, and what I'm having trouble understanding as well, is from what we've said, I haven't heard anything from you that you're in favor. I mean, you keep saying you want this 15 unit per acre.
Correct.
We're approving 12 if we approve this, but we haven't heard that that's acceptable. We haven't heard that, 4 stories were, the density's too high. We haven't heard from you that you would consider less than 4 stories. And we've also said that we would like to see multi-use in there. And what I'm hearing from you is you're not for multi-use. So the 3 main points that we've kind of made here tonight that we'd like to see in this piece of property, I haven't heard from you guys that you're in favor of that. It's kind of like we want to put this project in there and nothing else. And so I think that's, if I'm not speaking for Mr. Bennett, but I think that's what I'm hearing from him, and I'm kind of the same boat. That I'm not hearing that that's something you want to go forward with.
Well, related to the height, I would like to be able to bring forth design and have the flexibility to go up to 4 stories. If you're not going to allow me to, I would rather know on the front end, so I don't bring forward designs that contemplate 4 stories and go spend all those dollars just to get shot down. So that's what I'm talking about. I would like some framework to work within to then be able to produce plans that would come forward and meet those criteria. So if you tell me we don't want 4-story buildings, you're just not going to get a higher end product with an elevator and a corridor. You're going to get 3-story walk-ups and 2-story flats. And so it's just a market decision from Germantown's standpoint. Like, I don't have to do a 4-story building. No, I'd like to try to do one. And so, but if you tell me I can't do it, I'm not going to do it. And so then related to mixed use, I can go put a 10,000 square foot retail strip out there if you want. And it can be integrated in a meaningful way. I just don't think it'll be that great as opposed to building retail density in your core in the Forest Hill Heights core area plan, where you have the linear park, you have your spine road coming down, you have a lot of room to do a bunch of mixture of uses with hotels, restaurants, with only 450, I think, linear feet of frontage. With overhead power lines on one side. I hope my buildings will be better looking for people to the west than the high voltage transmission lines that people look at right now. So you had one other third. I did the mixed use question, the height question. What was your third question?
Density 12.
The density 12. Yeah, I just feel like it's consistent with every other application coming forward. I would like the extra density.
They're before us, they've been approved.
Application or previously development on the ground. So 15 units per acre is just a generic standard apartment density. Well, can I live with 12 units to the acre? Sure, I would like to do 15 units to the acre. I mean, that's what and it's not that dense. I mean, the development matrix in the RCLCO plan goes up to 25 units to the acre. And
We
even
understand that, Mr. Pinkley. We have a plan. Have you looked at the Forest Hill Heights plan?
I have, and I'm
Okay,
operating
then we're
within
not.
the plan.
Hold on a
My
second.
land use.
Okay, hold on a second. We're not building apartment complexes like down the street. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we want here. That's the whole reason to do the plan. What do you want to be built in this Forest Hill Heights neighborhood? And as the mayor said, and as all the citizens who participate, it's a disservice to them to go in and say, we wanted you to spend time and effort to tell us what you want and study and have meetings upon meetings, and they come up with this wonderful plan, and then to have somebody say, well, we really don't think that makes any sense to us. And I understand that you could do more. I'm not saying you can't. Okay, I'm saying that here, we're saying that's not what we are looking for. So just listen to us, and then you can do what you want. You may decide, you know, I really don't want to build in Germantown. That's fine if you don't want to build in Germantown. But if you do, pay attention to what we're asking of you. Okay, that's all we're saying. Okay, you can do with that what you want.
Commissioner Bennett, thank you. I know you have a comment.
I apologize for having to step out, but you know, just thinking about this and that from the outline plan conditions, you know, 12 units to the acre is a number, 15 units to the acre is a number. If this could, and thinking about the way that Goodwin Farms talked about their development plan being a phased development plan to take 10 years and respond to the market, you know, taking down 10 to 15 lots at a time over, so that there are 20 lots, you know, 230 lots over 10 years, that there could be a way for Boyle to design around the 15 units to the acre and phase it over a longer period of time and include the mixed-use elements that we're looking for. Because with this outline plan, it's just a box that we're putting them in, and they don't have to fill the entire box. It's up to 12 units to the acre, it's up to 15 units to the acre, but it's Boyle's job, Mr. Binkley's job, to design to the highest and best use within that box that the Planning Commission and the plan is drawing them in, and to make sure that it does create that place that we're looking for. And if he comes back with a final plan that doesn't utilize the 15 units to the acre or the 4-story building, not that he's getting the 4-story option tonight as part of this outline plan approval, but the ability to spread those units and create some dynamic buildings out there up to 4 stories, even if it's just 2 4-story buildings out of 12 or 15 buildings out there built over time, that he could build the market, build the community, and that our friends to the east in Collierville could be ready to respond with other elements of mixed-use design to where we are able to blur those borders. But if it comes in all at once, it's this commission's job to determine whether the community's ready from an infrastructure basis that now includes a new school, as to whether we are ready for that 15 units to the acre. And whether he builds all 375 units at once, or takes those 375 units down over 3 phases at 125 apiece.
Mr. Binkley, I think you've heard some good comments from the commission. I hope you take it to heart, okay? All of us are residents of Germantown. We're passionate about what we do. So I think you're getting a feel for that. The staff does an excellent job of getting a feel for what the residents of Germantown want. We encourage you to listen closely to them. Now, with that said, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any other discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. Call for a vote, please.
Mr. Biden?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think anybody disputes that it's a very difficult piece of property. It's certainly difficult from the standpoint of the power lines, the railroad, not the least of which, it's a long linear piece of property. I'm voting no. I just think it's the wrong place to put apartments. I think on that side of Winchester, in a very small, slender, whatever the density is, and it's whether it's 12 or 15, I just think it's too dense of a development for that, in that location, on that side of Winchester, and I'm voting against it.
Clay?
I too would like to see a lot more information on this property. I agree with Mr. Bennett on that, and because of the increased density and the lack of mixed use on this development, I just don't believe that it's within the overall intent of this property, what the area plan called for. I'm going to be voting no.
Mr. Good?
For comments I've previously made, I'm going to be voting no as well. I just don't think what's been proposed fits within what is the spirit of the Forest Hill Heights area plan, and that's what we're trying to make sure we develop this property consistent with that. And I don't think what I've heard today is consistent with that. So, no.
I mean, we've heard comments tonight on, I made my points, my 3 points there, and in my opinion, it's just an outline plan that we're looking at now. It's not a final site plan. So I'm going to vote yes in favor of it, but I would like to see them come back with those 3 points that I made on density, the heights, and just a better overall multi-use development than what they propose in the outline plan.
Mr. Hernandez?
I'm also going to be voting yes, and similar rationale to Mr. Clark. I certainly respect the opinion of my fellow commissioners that this might not be a fully developed plan at this point, at this juncture, but by the same token, it is an outline plan, and I think generally is consistent with the intent of the Forest Hill Small Area Plan. I do certainly encourage the applicant to come back if this passes and if he chooses to, and take into consideration a number of the comments of the commissioners, regardless of how they voted.
Alderman Owens?
I'd like to say, in true political fashion, I very much appreciate Boyle and everything that you have done in our community and your development. I'm struggling here because I think that we all have a concern about the amount of multifamily that is being presented down in this Forest Hill Heights. And I do not think, I'm certainly not one who thinks that density in multifamily is a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I think it's necessary for us to have density to support the retail that we have in this small area plan. It's a small, thin site, and I just, I think that, like my other commissioners who have said, this is essentially zoned for this, and in generally in keeping with the small area plan. 12 units is somewhat of a compromise in terms of reducing the density. So I will vote yes.
Mr. Saunders?
I'd like to point out to Boyle that although you talk about 4-story providing more high-end, one of the things we're going to be looking at when you bring back this plan is how well it fits in with our concept. And if you're bringing in a cookie-cutter apartment complex design, you're going to be amazed how far that doesn't go. I think you need to start taking consideration of a very good blend of apartment complex buildings, taking consideration of what is located to the west of you. I do think that the housing that is proposed there on the western side of is a transitional point between the other larger housing. And due to the fact that this is an outline plan, I'm going to go along with a vote of yes on it, with the understanding that high scrutiny of what you bring forth from this point is going to be there.
Spirited discussion, and I'm voting yes for the outline plan. I think the comments that Commissioner Saunders made, along with the other commissioners, are very apropos, that you're going to get a lot of scrutiny when you come before us with the site plan. We are looking for something other than a cookie cutter. I would also encourage you strongly to talk to the neighbors before you get in to see us, okay? So that they can see what you're talking about, because that has an impact. So I vote yes.
In true political fashion, you have your votes. I'm going to abstain. I lean toward yes, simply because I want to see this plan come back. But I will point out to the applicant, you know, you have your work cut out for you. We'd like to see a whole lot more shilling farms than something else on this precious piece of land. It is a challenging site, but as I look at the design standards that we set for this particular district, they are at the highest end. And you know, this isn't a revenue grab for us. This isn't a financial grab for us. This is about seeing the best product mix in this area, pure and simple, end story. And we know that we can acquire that because there are a lot of people competing for the rare amount of land that's there. So bring us back your best when you come back before us. And I agree with every comment that was made, dissenting or approving tonight. So abstain. Thank you.
And with that, the plan is approved. So I appreciate everyone's comments. Is there anything else to come before the commission? If not, we
want to just
We gotta make the announcement.
make the announcement.
Oh. You're all for it. Item 5D that we moved to the end, Watermark, they have just asked to not make a presentation tonight. They are going to come back before us at a later date. So I was jumping the gun, and I apologize. Now, with that said, we stand adjourned.